Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're looking at, well, not just any instrument. We're revisiting a true legend, the Sequential Prophet 5.
hmm
Its return, with Dave Smith himself involved after all these years. This Rev 4 feels pretty special.
It really does. It's like meeting an old friend who's learned some new tricks.
Exactly.
And what's great is it's not just nostalgia. They've been incredibly meticulous.
Right. Recreating it faithfully, but with some smart updates, too.
Yeah, it's a fascinating balance. Honoring the legacy, but making it work for today.
So, to really kind of get under the hood of what makes this synth so iconic, we're doing our deep dive into the Prophet 5 User's Guide.
Good plan.
Think of it as maybe a quick start guide for anyone who wants the essence of this thing without reading cover to cover.
Right, whether you own one, dream of one, or are just curious why it's such a big deal.
We'll pull out the key stuff, give you a feel for what it can do and its place in history.
Exactly. And the user's guide itself is pretty thorough. Goes from plugging it in right up to deep sound design, specs.
It's a lot. And there's that OS 2.0 addendum too, right?
Yeah, we'll touch on that. Add some cool stuff, especially if you have the Prophet 10 or the expanded 5.
Okay. But our main mission here is just to cut through the detail, find the juicy bits, and understand the Prophet 5's power without getting bogged down.
Let's do it.
Okay, so basics first. At its heart, the Prophet 5. It's a 5-voice polyphonic analog synthesizer.
Which means essentially 5 independent synth voices running in parallel. Pure analog signal path, VCOs, VCFs, VCAs.
That's where that warmth comes from, that richness. And this new one, it's designed to nail the sound of all 3 original revisions.
Which is pretty cool. How they've done that is quite clever, actually. They've used genuine Curtis chips.
Ah, for the Rev 3 sound.
Exactly, the same type used back then. But then they've also put in a new filter, the SSI 2140.
Designed by Dave Rossum.
The man himself. It's his modern take on the SSM 2040 filter from the Rev 1 and Rev 2.
Wow.
So you get this Rev switch.
Right on the front panel, I saw that.
Yeah, and it lets you flip between these 2 filter characters. It's not just 2 filters. It's like switching between different eras of the Prophet sound.
So the SSI 2140 is the modern SSM 2040 type. 4-pole, 24 dB octave, resonant.
Yep, can self-oscillate.
Yeah.
Cuts those highs pretty sharply, and the resonance gives you that classic sweep sound.
And the Curtis CEM 3D320 is also 4-pole, 24 dB octave, self-oscillating.
Correct. But they sound different. The guide even points out that flipping the switch suddenly changes the filter envelope's response to match the original Rev 12 or Rev 3 behavior.
That's incredible detail, like having 2 synths in one box.
Pretty much, and it makes you think, why both? Well, each has its own flavor, right?
Right.
Affects how the envelope shapes the timbre.
The Rossum SSM design has maybe a bit more bite compared to the smoother Curtis.
Generally, yeah. People often say the Rossum is maybe more aggressive, good for leads, basses.
While the Curtis is creamier, good for pads, evolving stuff.
That's the common take, yeah. Having both just opens up the whole historical palette.
Okay, and then there's the vintage knob. That's not just cosmetic, is it?
Not at all.
Yeah.
That's a really key feature. It dials in the, let's call it instability of the older models.
The quartz.
Exactly. As you turn it from 4, which is stable, modern Rev 4 behavior, down towards 1, the more temperamental Rev 1.
You get more randomness.
Yeah, and the pitch of the oscillators, the filter cutoff, the envelope timings, even the amplifier levels, just subtle variations.
So it adds that organic drift that alive feeling vintage synths have.
Precisely. Because older components weren't perfectly matched. This knob lets you intentionally reintroduce some of that analog character. You can spend ages just tweaking that for the perfect vintage feel.
Makes sense. So powerful sound sources, switchable filters, vintage character control. How do you actually, use it all?
Well, that's the beauty of the front panel. The guide really stresses this. Everything important is right there. Knobs, switches.
Very hands-on.
Totally. Oscillators, mixer, filter, envelopes, LFO, modulation, all clearly laid out. It encourages tweaking.
Less menu diving, more playing.
Exactly. It's built for performance and immediate sound shaping.
Okay, let's walk through those sections. Oscillators first.
Sure. 2 VCOs per voice. Osca A gives you sawtooth and pulse waves.
Variable pulse width.
Yep. And it can hard sync the oscillator B.
For those classic tearing sync sounds.
Right. Where Osca A's waveform restarts every time Osca B's cycle begins. Great for complex, shifting harmonics.
And Oscar B.
Osca has sawtooth, triangle, and variable pulse width, plus a fine-tuned knob for detuning against Osca.
For that thick chorusy effect.
Exactly. And it has a couple of handy switches. Low free turns it into an LFO.
Oh, cool. A second LFO, essentially.
Kind of, yeah. Expands your modulation options.
Yeah.
And the keyboard switch disconnects its pitch tracking.
For drones, or just using it as that modulation source without the pitch changing.
Spot on. Very flexible.
Okay, then the mixer section seems pretty simple.
It is. Levels for OSC-A, OSC-B, and the white noise generator.
The guide mentions overloading it.
Yeah, classic analog trick. Push the levels past unity gain, drive the filter or VCA harder, adds a bit of grit, saturation. Nice character.
Gotcha. Now the filter section, we touched on the rev switch.
Right. Choosing between the SSI 2140 and CEM 3320 low-pass filters, big part of the Prophet sound.
And the controls are cutoff, resonance,
Envelope, amount how much the envelope moves the cutoff, and keyboard track.
keyboard tracking. That makes higher notes brighter, right?
Yeah.
Like acoustic instruments.
Exactly. You can set how much the filter opens up as you go higher on the keyboard. Zero tracking keeps it the same for all notes. Full tracking makes high notes much brighter.
Makes sense. And then envelopes. Crucial.
Absolutely. Dedicated ADSR envelopes for both the filter and the amplifier. Standard attack, decay, sustain, release stages.
You really define the shape of the sound over time.
Totally. How sharp the attack is, whether it sustains, how long it fades out. The guide emphasizes how vital these are.
And there's a velocity switch.
Yeah, lets you control the envelope amount for filter and/or amp loudness with how hard you play the keys. Adds expressiveness.
Nice. Okay, what about adding movement? LFO.
Yep, the low-frequency oscillator. It's subaudible, creates periodic modulation.
Like vibrato.
Vibrato, filter sweeps, pulse width modulation, that kind of thing.
What shapes does it have?
Sawtooth, triangle, and square. Each gives a different modulation feel, smooth versus more abrupt.
And controls for speed and amount.
Frequency and initial amount, yeah.
Yeah.
How fast it goes and how intense it is from the start.
And the wheel mod section uses this LFO.
Right. It lets you route the LFO or the noise generator to different places. Oscillator pitch, pulse width, filter cutoff using the mod wheel.
And you can blend the LFO and noise.
Yeah, the source mix knob lets you mix between LFO and noise as the modulation source for the wheel.
Yeah.
You can have a base amount of modulation always on, then bring in more or something different with the wheel.
Okay, that's flexible. But then there's polymod. That sounds important.
Oh, it is. Polyphonic modulation is like a signature Prophet 5 thing.
What does it do exactly?
It lets you use oscillator B or the filter envelope as a modulation source.
Oh, okay. Modulating what?
OSC-A's frequency, OSC-A's pulse width, and the filter cutoff frequency.
Right, but why polyphonic?
Because the modulation happens independently for each voice. So if you use the filter envelope to modulate pitch slightly, each note in a chord gets its own subtle pitch contour.
Ah, I see. That creates much more complex, evolving sounds than a single global LFO.
Exactly. It's key to those really rich, organic, animated Prophet pads and textures. Super powerful.
Okay, switching gears a bit. The user's guide mentions some useful tricks, like the basic preset.
Yeah, that's a great starting point. Hold record, press preset. Gives you just a simple, single sawtooth wave from OSC-A.
Perfect for learning, right? Building a sound from scratch.
Definitely. You hear exactly what each control does. Highly recommended.
And live panel mode.
Also great for learning. Just toggle the preset button off. Now the sound instantly matches the physical knob and switch positions.
What you see is what you get.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Bypasses the stored patch. It's immediate, encourages experimentation. You just twist knobs and hear the result.
Good for finding happy accidents too, I bet.
Oh yeah, essential mode.
The guide also covers saving sounds, comparing edits, and the global setting.
Right, globals affect the whole instrument, not just one patch. Things like MIDI channel, transpose.
And those pop modes, relative, pass-through, jump.
Yeah, they change how the knobs behave when you load a preset, and the physical knob position doesn't match the stored value.
Jump means the sound instantly jumps to the knob's value.
Yep. Pass-through means you have to move the knob through the stored value before it takes effect. Relative means it picks up from where it is and moves relatively.
People definitely have preferences there.
They do. Worth checking out early on to set it how you like.
Anything else key in globals?
The release sustain parameter is interesting. It tweaks how the front panel release switch and a sustain pedal interact with the envelopes. Offers classic P5 behavior or a more modern hold function.
Attention to detail again.
And alternative tunings.
Oh yeah, beyond standard tuning.
Yep, 16 built-in alternatives. Historical temperaments like mean tone, just intonation, microtonal stuff, opens up different harmonic possibilities.
Cool. For more experimental sounds.
Definitely. Robert Rich apparently helped with those.
Nice. What about performance controls? Pitch and mod wheels.
Standard stuff, yeah. The guide shows how to set the pitch bend range per program and mentions the aftertouch.
Monophonic aftertouch.
Yeah, apply pressure after playing a key, and it can modulate filter cutoff or LFO amount or both. Has a nice expressive touch.
And glide.
Yeah, glide rate knob for portamento, that smooth slide between notes.
What about unison mode? For big mono sounds.
Right. Stacks up to all 5 voices onto a single note.
Yeah.
You can control how many voices stack and how much they're detuned.
For really fat leads or basses.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It also has chord memory in unison. Play a chord, store it, then trigger the whole chord with single key presses.
Creative. And key priority modes.
Yeah. Low note, last note priority determines which note sounds if you play legato or run out of voices in unison. Standard monosynth behavior options.
Okay. Keeping it in tune. Master tune knob, A440 reference tone.
Yep, for fine-tuning and checking against the standard pitch.
And that release switch we mentioned interacts with the global setting.
Right. And the tune button runs the auto-calibration. Important for analog synths, especially if the temperature changes.
Keeps the oscillators and filters stable.
The guide recommends running it periodically. Thankfully, it's automatic.
Does it talk about connecting to other gear? Modular stuff?
Briefly, yeah. It has CV and gate inputs and outputs.
Control voltage and gate.
Right. Uses the standard 1 volt per octave for CV pitch control, so you can sequence it from modular gear or control other synths. Gate in out triggers the envelopes.
Does using the gate in affect polyphony?
It does. Reduces it to 4 voices, according to the guide. But yeah, it opens up integration with Eurorack and other CV gate gear. Pretty cool for hybrid setups.
And finally, troubleshooting. Any highlights there?
Yeah, the appendix covers common stuff.
Mm-hmm.
No sound, weird sounds, MIDI issues, tuning problems.
What kind of things cause tuning issues?
Well, besides needing calibration, it suggests checking the transpose setting, master tune knob, the vintage knob position, even the alternative tuning setting. Sometimes it's a simple setting mistake.
Good tips. And it mentions that OS 2.0 addendum again at the end.
Just a quick teaser, really. Mentions stack and split modes playing 2 different patches at once, but notes that's mainly for the Prophet 10 or an expanded Prophet 5. Hints at more depth for those with the bigger systems.
Okay, so wrapping this all up,
Yeah.
what are the big takeaways from this user's guide deep dive?
I mean, it really confirms the Prophet 5's core strengths. That undeniable analog sound.
Yeah, the warmth.
The incredibly versatile filters with that rev switch, giving you 2 distinct flavors.
Yeah.
Powerful modulation, especially polymod, which is just so unique.
And that immediate hands-on control panel.
Absolutely. It just invites you to play and shape sounds. It's clear why it's a classic, and this new version really seems to nail it with those modern refinements like the vintage knob.
It feels like a perfect blend of old school character and modern usability.
I think so. It's got the vibe, but it's reliable and deep. Great for classic sounds, but also for pushing into new sonic territory.
So for anyone listening, whether you have one or you're just synth curious.
Definitely explore it more if you can. Start with that basic preset.
Yeah, and play around in live panel mode. Just get a feel for it.
And if specific things caught your ear today, the filters, polymod, whatever, dive into those sections in the actual guide. It's all in there.
Yeah, it really rewards a bit of exploration.
Definitely. And, thinking about it, it makes you wonder about the enduring appeal of these analog machines, right? In such a digital age.
Good point. What is it about them?
Maybe it's those imperfections we talked about. The subtle variations, the way the different analog parts interact. That vintage knob kind of points to it.
That slight unpredictability.
Yeah, perhaps. That organic quality that digital sometimes struggles to replicate perfectly. What makes that specific combination of circuits in the Prophet 5 create that? Well, that magic people always talk about, something to think about.